mic and I wasn't even live. But here I am live today. Please chime in if you're listening, if you hung in with me through the technical difficulties. We are here today, okay? One thing we do want to talk about, I had said earlier that we want to talk about local union finances and we want to talk about your personal finances, and we want to talk about this election we're having, right? We want to make sure that everyone kind of take it down a notch, right? Take it down. We want to, this is an election. This is democracy. We all have an opportunity to run in this election. Just do your research, be informed members, vote for the candidate that you feel is best. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here today to make my case of why you should vote for Ciers for UAW Secretary Treasurer, right? I have definitely the experience. I've been a servant leader for this membership since 2011 when I first was elected. I have definitely the knowledge, the experience, and it's about leadership. It's about leadership and experience, And so to win this campaign, we need to make sure that we get the donations in. That's why you see right here to your right, rock the vote, right? One union, all voices, all sectors respected, whether you big three, agriculture, CS, IPS, aerospace, higher ed, gaming, our nurses, our librarians, any other sector, our public sector, our state of Michigan workers. Our public sector is so huge in advancing our higher ed. Definitely higher ed. I definitely respect everything you do, our researchers and postdocs. We are growing. We are a modernizing union, right? And we're just much bigger than the big three because we're growing, and we want to continue our growth moving forward into the future. And I just want to help support all of that growth because I believe firmly when it's time to strike, it's time to strike for a better contract. And when it's time to organize, it's time to organize. There was a reason why organizing became the 11th mandated standing committee in the Constitution in 2022 because we understood our deficit in density. And so we want to make sure that the density we have will be able to sustain us in the future. All right? So we know that the Constitutional Convention that we just had, we had a dues increase. Not a dues increase, a dues threshold increase that increased our threshold to $1.3 billion, keeping our dues at 2.5 hours. Okay, so that half hour will still continue to be attached to your check every first week of the month, and we want to make sure that we continue to support our union because it's a reason why there was a threshold increase because we have a lot of challenges. We got a lot of bargaining that we're planning on doing in the near future with a lot of our May Day activities, and so we want to make sure we have strength at the bargaining table. I definitely agree with that. We had a threshold of $850 million, right? We just don't really know when we cross that threshold. So we got to find out when that is. And I guarantee you, my sisters and brothers out there, if you're owed any money from the dues reaching the threshold before the Constitutional Convention, I am the Secretary Treasurer that's going to get it back to you right away. Right away. Let's clap for that. Let's clap for that. All right, I'm looking for somebody in the live chat. Who in the live chat with me here on our first Financial Fridays? Let's talk about it. So on the dues conversation as well, we want to say that, we know that the dues is is very important because we are an organization that survives off two things. Anybody tell me what that is? I'll tell you right now. Dues dollars and return on investments. Return on investments is key to our survival as an organization. That's why we have to make sure we have a strong investment committee and we have a lot of training for not only our international executive board, but for our leaderships at our local unions, right? We want you to be thrive, want you to thrive and have an opportunity to make gains as well. There are some investment instruments that you can use, such as savings, money markets, such as CDs, right? Bonds. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to have not only not just don't have your money sitting in a checking account. We highly advise that you try to use some type of investment instrument to bring about a return that's feasible for your local union. So let's clap for them returns, y'all. Yes, let's clap for them returns. We gotta have it, right? And even in our investment policy, right, in 2018, we identified that we just can't we cannot just invest in American the American market, right? We have to diversify our investment account. So we want to make sure that we are well-rounded in our investments in the International Union and that we're bringing returns. We're bringing returns, y'all. We have to bring returns. Let's talk about that. Let's clap for returns. Financial Friday. I'm waiting on the question to pop up. I'm hoping I'm live. I'm seeing I'm live. How y'all like the Union Hall? Y'all, this is Ciers live from the Union Hall. Chime in. Let me get a question. Hopefully you seeing it. Let's talk about it, right? Right? Let's talk about it. We know for our accounting here at the International Union, I worked as a let me start back my history. I was elected trustee of my local union. While I was a trustee, I noticed some things that needed to change. So I ran for financial secretary successfully in 2014. Those changes were made. By the end of my term in 2014, my general fund went from $80,000 when I assumed office as financial secretary to $890,000, y'all. 10-time fold. Clap for that. Right? Let's clap for that. Right? 10 times. We all about gains. When you talk Ciers, you're talking gains on investments. You're talking gains in the market. You're talking gains in your leadership and in your general fund. So after getting reelected overwhelmingly in 2017, I was offered a position to work as an International Union auditor by then Secretary Treasurer Gary Castile. Let's give it up for Gary Castile, y'all. Yes, remarkable union brother. And so as an auditor, it was definitely something that I really love to do, right? Travel around the country. It opened my eyes. I really started to see that the International Union, the UAW, was much, much more vast than the big three, right? I started to audit sectors that I had never even seen before, right? Or barely even knew anybody that worked in those sectors. But I started to travel, definitely got in touch with, was able to help a lot of local unions across the country. Shout out to my locals in Iowa. Shout out to my locals in Alabama, locals in Upper Michigan. We did a lot of hard work as auditors back in those days. And back in those days, as auditors, we had a great auditing team. We had a threshold of 32 to 35 audits a year, right? So the 10 auditors, we would get about 350 audits done a year. And so we were able to make sure that we were in and out of locals at least in one term. So a local didn't have a election cycle where they didn't see an auditor, right? So, and can't really say that's the case right now. We have to get back to that. And that's why I'm running for Secretary Treasurer, y'all. Yes. We want to shore up our auditing department. So with that being said, we have a lot of resources we have to use, right? And so sometimes when locals need training, because we know there's always a higher turnover with elections in some local unions. And believe it or not, in some local unions, some smaller unions, you could barely, sometimes it's hard to fill the Secretary Treasurer's position. I mean, the Financial Secretary's position, because it's a hard job. It's sometimes it's just you have to do taxes, you have to do LM reporting, you have to do 990 reporting, and some locals just don't have the resources, right, to pay a full time book or pay a local union officer to be there full time. And we find that sometimes stipends for that job are sometimes they aren't that much, and so there's a big difference between being out and seeing how locals in different sectors operate other than the big three, and it kind of opened my eyes because out there in the country, you found a lot of dedicated sisters and brothers doing the work, right? Making sure that the work got done day in and day out. And I was definitely proud to see all of that, right? It kind of made me want to work harder as an auditor because and sometimes you go to them locals, they would have very, very good books. We called it good books, right? Shout out to my man who trained me, God rest his soul, George Nelevanko, my mentor. Yes, and he definitely trained me how to look for good books. And so it was very important that as an auditor, you had great conversations, but you left the locals with something that made them feel better about the job they were doing. And so it helped shape me into a person that always wanted to give back to the membership. And so as an auditor, and sometimes when there were honest mistakes, right? Sometimes the per capita was inaccurate, the per capita payments, because there are several reasons why that could happen, right? It could be bonuses, it could be membership changes, but you always want to work with the local unions to make sure that you do the proper training, that you document, and you just become a person where you build relationships. And I was able to build relationships all around this country doing audits and also strike assistance, right? Shout out to my higher ed workers out at UC, my people out at UC Berkeley. I remember that monumental strike that we